What's the number one thing that we all resort to when we're trying to make small talk? Weather.
Oh my God, it's freezing this morning.
Yeah.
I need somewhere else to take this conversation. Let's look into it.
Is this winter actually colder than usual, or am I just weak? Well, I know I'm definitely not alone.
I'm from Norway, but Australian winters have humbled me.
Lads, these Australian winters are a joke. Ireland, I'll never take your insulation for granted ever again.
So is this winter actually colder than normal? Well, I've been seeing a number of headlines that winter this year in Australia is colder than normal. So I interviewed senior meteorologist Dean Narramore from the Bureau of Meteorology.
Last winter was one of our warmest winters on record. So coming off the back of that, and many places seeing some of their coldest temperatures in the last 3, 5 and even 10 years is definitely making it feel like it's one of the coldest winters ever. But when you actually look at the stats, not quite so.
So basically last year's winter was actually Australia's warmest winter on record. And this winter has had lower than average temperatures so far. So comparatively, the difference feels vast, and it's the juxtaposition between this year and last year that's leading our small talk.
But when you actually look at the stats, particularly around June, many of us were near or just slightly below average for at least June, and we've started off July pretty cold as well.
But overall, we're not experiencing record low temperatures. In fact, our winters are getting warmer. But that doesn't change the fact that it feels quite cold, and that's because of something called the feels like temperature.
So feels like temperature takes into account not only the air temperature, but also relative humidity, how much moisture is in the atmosphere, and also wind speed. Feels like temperature works on what a body would feel like in the outside conditions.
Without getting too technical, how is the feels like temperature calculated?
It's a math equation, which I won't get into, but basically it kind of looks at the air temperature times by wind speed and the amount of moisture. And there's a few other little things in the background as well.
Okay, so we know we're in a warming climate that is making our winters warmer, and we know that there's a difference between the actual temperature and what the temperature feels like. But there's one more part to why we're feeling so cold that we haven't spoken about yet. And that's how cold our houses are in Australia, because a lot of houses don't have very good insulation. Insulation is what maintains the temperature indoors. So to understand more, I spoke to Nicola Willand from RMIT University.
If you've got hot and cold on two sides of a wall, insulation will resist that heat transfer. Think about your puffer jackets. It keeps you warm inside while it's cold outside.
So what's the issue in Australia when it comes to insulation? Well, our houses don't have the best track record. In places like Europe, they had standards for things like insulation earlier on, whereas here in Australia, we didn't have proper insulation standards introduced until 2005.
Newer homes are better insulated than older homes. So if you've got a home that was built before the 1990s, usually those homes have got very little insulation.
Another way that this impacts you if you're in a house with little insulation is the cost of keeping it warm. A not-for-profit organisation called Renew made a submission to the federal government. It reported that the average heating costs for a home in Melbourne with proper insulation and reverse cycle aircon was 83% cheaper than a home without insulation and a gas heater.
All in all, our winters aren't actually getting colder, George, but we're probably feeling the chills because our homes lack insulation. What do you reckon?
Informative.